I'm your host, Jeremy Lindsey, tax strategist, business owner, father, in pursuit of personal growth and development. And today I wanted to bring in a really intimate story to you guys, something that resonates big time with who I am as a person. And I really, really think this is going to be a great episode for you guys. Stick with me, hang in there, and we're going to have a great time. So imagine you're at work on a Thursday. It's 6 p.m. and I had just got my third text from my wife asking me where the heck I was because I was running late to go home so that she could then go to a PTA meeting for our son. I was stuck in a meeting with my boss, with an attorney and with another person. And we were talking about how to grow the business, what modifications needed to be made in the business. We were talking about big adjustments that needed to be made to secure the success of our future. And I was a COO at the time, and the conversation had already gone on for like an hour and a half. And I had told my boss previously, hey, I have to be at home, 6 p.m., I gotta be home. It's a personal family matter and I gotta be there. We're in the meeting and it's getting very tense. And I'm like, guys, I gotta go. This isn't working out. Like you guys can figure out what you want to do. You guys can set the trajectory. I'm the COO. I've given my 2 cents. You guys tell me what you guys want me to do and I can go make it happen. And my boss, out of frustration, turns and looks at me and says, "You're a disappointment to me. Get out of my face." At the time, I didn't think anything of it. I really didn't. And the reason I didn't think anything of it is because my boss and I had these interactions pretty frequently. However, this is the first time that he ever told me that I was a disappointment. And so I remember leaving and saying, "Okay, no problem. I'm out." And I remember walking out, walking in my car, and I remember calling my wife on the way home. And I said, "Hey, babe, I'm on my way home now. Sorry, I'm running late. I just got out of this meeting. Sorry, I was answering your text messages." And she's like, "What happened? What's going on?" And I'm like, "Oh, don't worry about it. I'll tell you when I get home." And I lived about 15 minutes away, so the car ride was pretty fun. And she could tell something was going on she could tell something was going on by the tone of my voice. And she says, "No, tell me what happened." And I was like, "No, we'll talk about it when we get home." Now, the other interesting part about this story is that it happened to be the day that my wife's goddaughter was born. And so not only was she going to go to the PTA meeting, but we were also going to go to the hospital afterwards. And so it was a very big day for a beginning of life celebration. Her goddaughter was just born. It was a really, really exciting day for her. For me, it was a very stressful day at work. As most of us know, everybody kind of has those days, and it was a big, big struggle. Anyway, so my wife, going back on the car ride, I'm coming home, and my wife says, "No, something's wrong. Tell me what's wrong right now. Tell me what's wrong, because I want to go to the PTA meeting and I don't want to have to think about this." So I told her what happened. I told her what my boss said, and she says, "Are you kidding me?" And I said, "No." And she says, "That's it. We're done. We're done working for him. You're not working for him anymore. I'm not going to let you work for him anymore." And I says, "Well, babe, don't jump to conclusions. At the time we were making really good money. And even though there were some struggles that we were going through here and there with both my boss and both with the staff and everything else, there was this essence of, we're going to make it work. We've been pushing through to make this thing work for years and years and years." And I was like, "Babe, let's not make any crazy decisions." And she says, "Okay, we'll talk about it more after you get home." We get home. She ends up canceling the PTA meeting. We talk a little bit more. She gives me a hug. She makes sure that I'm okay. And that's really when it dawned on me was, wow, my boss really said that. Why would a boss say that? Like, out of anything devastating, he said that. So we go to the hospital. We live the rest of our night in celebrating the birth of my wife's niece. And I realized at that moment, I could never go back into that office. Let me set some more backstory for you guys. I worked in an accounting and tax firm previous to this, previous to being Clarity Tax Advisors. And I worked a year and a half right out of high school. I climbed the corporate ladder. I sat in every job available. I sat in the receptionist job. I sat in the administrative assistant's job. I was helping the firm create a website. I was helping the firm create marketing material and launch and do all this stuff. I saw it all from the beginning in 2005. Graduated high school 2004. I sat in every role. I met all the people. I saw the company 2004 go from, or 2005, go from, 8 to 10 staff members all the way up to 32 staff members. There was 4 separate companies. Things were going well. I was part of that growth. Throughout that whole entire process, I would watch and I would pay attention. I would watch and pay attention. In 2012 came around, and actually, I think it was a little bit before that. The company suffered a 65 to 70% loss of revenue within 15 months. It was because it's a bad economic downturn. A lot of our clients were in construction. It was when construction was a terrible, terrible condition. And the boss came to me and said, "Hey, Jeremy, I need you to step up and I need you to become a junior advisor." And I said, "Okay, no problem. I'll do that. I'm all about it." And so I did. And the company went from 32 employees down to 8. And when I kind of stepped up into the junior advisor role, that role put me above just about everybody, except for the boss. And I was in charge of not only maintaining client accounts, not only maintaining client relationships, I was in charge of just about everything. So revenue, training, employee utilization, making sure that people are doing what they're doing, making sure that they need to do what they're doing, training them to the extent that they need training, hiring and firing people, just doing it all. By the time 2019 came around, we were back up to 17 or 18 people in the firm, and firm was doing triple the amount of revenue from 2012. Now, I would like to say that was all me, but it wasn't all me. I did have very high level of influence in it, but there was still a lot of team around me. There was a couple of team members that were successful around me, and they contributed to the cause. But let me elaborate a little more on the working conditions here, because I feel like it's really important. The biggest struggles that I had was it was long hours, and it was very frustrating because with long hours comes your lack of personal time. In 2012 is when I met my wife, and we had a child pretty early, and my child was around in 2013. And so in 2013 to 2019, let's see, that's 5 years. That would mean that I was working 50, 60, 70-hour weeks. And it was very frustrating because my wife would tell me about these cool stories between her and my son when I got home. And I would say, man, that bums me out. And I know people can relate to this because you're so stuck working. You don't understand how to balance that work with the personal life and all that other stuff, which is a whole nother episode that we'll get into in future dates. And it was another struggle because I would have to train somebody. There are many times where I would train people for 4 hours a day, 6 months out, 6 months after, only for them to quit and go to work for somebody else making more money because I trained them. They elevated their skill level. I would have to fly 9 times out of the year. So I'd be away from my family anywhere between 1 to 3 days out of that flight time. That was a struggle because my family never came with me. My income, albeit was commission-based to some degree, was very limited, very limited. And unfortunately, as I look back on it now and I reflect back on it now, I can see how limited it really was. It was limited a lot, knowing what I know today. So I missed a lot of my son's firsts out of his first 5 years. I did get to see him walk, but the problem is I don't remember those moments as clear as I should because I was worried about work. I was worried about cases. I was worried about revenue. I was worried about these things. I felt like my boss hated me. Interesting enough, every time I would bring an idea to him, or I would come to him in vulnerability or ask him for not just personal advice, but business advice, he'd kind of shine me away. He'd kind of minimize me. Many, many times, I would say out of 10 suggestions that I would make, I was required to make suggestions all the time. Out of about 10, 8 to 9 of them would be shut down by either him or the rest of the team, and he would side with them. Very, very frustrating. As such, there were these other expectations that were placed on me that were super unrealistic. Here I am in my 20s, my late 20s, early 30s, trying to grow a company, and yet these expectations, these sales figures that I was responsible for were off the charts. I was responsible for making $2 to $3 million in revenue, just me, just the cases that I was working on, with very limited training. It was very, very frustrating, very frustrating. Not to mention, I had to train staff. I had to balance budgets. I had to forecast sales revenues. And if the forecast wasn't rich enough, I had to figure out a way to make it more rich. So in a theory, I was already running my own business, but I was on a very limited income. So my ideas were constantly shut down. Now, there's not all bad things came from this. I am who I am today because of some of those struggles. I'll be honest. And it's hard to reflect on that. It's hard to reflect that truth. But the truth of the matter is the struggle that I went through during those several years being at my prior job caused me to be the person who I am today. Now, here the really cool things, because I believe that the conversation should be balanced a little bit. Really cool things about that place was I got to work with super rich people. I mean, I got to see how rich people spent their money, how they handled their finances, how they structured their legal structuring, how they structured their accounting, how they structured all their stuff. And that was really, really awesome because a large part of that was actually what we were doing for them. I learned how we were structuring their finances to generate the best and lowest tax possible for them. That made a huge deal because if you're working with someone who's going to save, let's say, $1 million in tax, they're able to see what they do with that extra million was really enlightening. And when you think about dreaming and you think about, oh man, I wish I had a Ferrari or this or that, the other thing, you'd be surprised. A lot of very wealthy people, yeah, Ferrari might be okay. But many of these people had toys and other homes, and they had a huge team behind them. And I see now why a big team behind somebody is more important than a Ferrari. And that is another podcast episode. One of the benefits of working for this company is I also worked with some of the top business coaches in the United States. And they taught me a lot of great things, a lot of great things. A lot of those things stick with me today, but also a lot of those things we're going to be talking about throughout this podcast series. I also helped our former firm near bankruptcy, I would say, with a 70% loss in revenue and a 75% cut in workforce. I helped them recover. And that was really, really powerful too. During that same time, I got educated. I got a Series 65 license, a life and health license. I took I took many, many CFP, certified financial planner, certified chartered financial consultant, the CHFC designation, took a lot of those courses, passed all of them. And then in 2016-17, I studied to get my enrolled agent license to become a certified tax preparer. When I did that, I was able to open up a new line of business for the firm, which generated substantial hundreds of thousands of dollars in money. Not only did it increase the firm revenue substantially, but it allowed the firm to then take control of the tax planning process. And we went from filing returns late September where I would frequently work till 2 a.m., go home, sleep, wake up 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, be at the office by 7:30, 8 o'clock again, doing it all over again, working with other CPAs to get tax returns filed on time. Didn't have to do that anymore. It improved the process 80, 85, 90% once we took control of that, because we were managing the workflow throughout the remaining balance of the year. We weren't managing the workflow within the last 30 days up to September 15th or August 15th to September 15th. I had some of the freedom to identify and install a workflow management system among the team members. And that experience really allowed me to understand the workings of a business and start understanding the importance of documenting an SOP, a standard operating procedure. That was really, really good. So for those reasons, I learned a lot. I also learned about, interacting with ultra high net worth, ultra wealthy people, their views and perspectives around money. I know that sounds duplicative, but when you talk to people who are ultra rich and ultra wealthy, they see money as a tool, not as a precious item, right? And so understanding that concept of saying, yeah, let's take money and let's move it here and let's do this and let's buy a building. They're not doing that to increase their wealth or to generate revenue. They're doing that to create more efficient lifestyle, a more efficient business process. And so they're doing it with intentionality behind it. And so to learn that and to see that, that was really, really great. But also their buying patterns, which allowed me to understand that the value of my advice is really, really valuable. And to some of my clients, it's as valuable as a exotic car. And I recognize that. And I also honor that. During those times, that helped me understand how valuable my advice really was. So the lessons that I learned from that whole interaction with my previous firm, I learned a lot of things. I learned how to manage a team, albeit I was told many, many times that my effective management skills were not that good. I learned how to generate revenue. I learned how to interact with clients and persuade them to do the right thing. I also learned how to do the wrong thing and to avoid that. As I reflect on this, I think for the listeners and for the viewers, as a business owner, you never want an employee to go through that, especially a key employee. Like when I take myself out of the role that I was in and being the quote unquote the inflicted person. I'm not going to say victim because that's a pretty strong word, and I don't believe in victim mentality. But when I look back and I look at the fact that my boss treated me the way that he treated me, and that some of the staff members treated me the way that they treated me. Now, mind you, not all the staff treated me terrible. I did get treated very well with a lot of people. But looking back on that, as a business owner now, if any one of my staff members went through that and felt that way, I would be devastated as a leader. I'd be devastated. And I think that there was a lot of red flags that a lot of people saw and did nothing about. All my people that work for me are all key people. So if any one of my team members felt the way that they felt, or felt the way that I felt during those moments, I would kick myself as a boss. I would have to take a long, hard look in the mirror to say, what is going on here? And why do I feel the way that I do? And am I lashing out? I'm guessing that my boss was not intentionally lashing out. I'm guessing that he was under a whole lot of stress, because as a business owner, you're under stress that nobody else can comprehend or conceive. Nobody else can understand. So, I'm sure there's reasons why he did that. But looking back on it, you never want your staff members to be treated a certain way. You never want them to feel a certain way about a certain topic. Now, I'm also not talking about this whole sensitive workforce movement where, we have to be culturally extremely sensitive to everything. Like, I do believe that there's a good balance between both. But as a boss, you need to treat your employees with respect. One of the things that I focus on with my team is I want to make sure that they are aware that I want to partner with them to make them successful. If you have a key employee, or if you have somebody that's on your team that's absolutely making a huge deal, tell them that. Say something. Hey, I really appreciate what you did. Nicole, you're killing it. Cynthia, you did this for this, and that was amazing. Melissa, you took the initiative and you rocked, right? Take an employee and highlight their benefits or highlight their strengths and make that aware. Make that big and celebrate that with them. Compliment them every chance that you get. Make them feel special. Because had my boss came and interacted with me and asked me about my personal goals and what am I trying to accomplish, and let me partner with you, Jeremy, to figure out what it is you want to do in your life, that would have made all the difference in the world. As an employee, or as technically a subcontractor, but as a team member, I would have been even more engaged, even more involved. I would have been positively motivated instead of negatively motivated. You know, the difference between positive and negative motivation. Negative is, if you don't do this, you're fired. And I was told this many, many times. Whereas positive motivation is, you were really great at that. I want to see more of it. What can we do to rearrange your priority list so that you do more of this? You have a positive impact, right? Vastly, drastic, big differences in both of those comments. Do this or you're fired versus, I really love the way that you did that, and I want you to continue to do that. How do we continue to repeat that success? That's a big deal. I think that periodic check-ins with your team and each one of your team members on a personal level, where your boss, you as a boss, you become vulnerable with some of your team members and you share with them some personal things that are going through your life. Now, obviously, you're not going to open up, and unless you want to, but I'm not asking you to open up and become, have a therapy session, but I am asking you to open up and be the leader they're looking for so that they can open up to you, so that your guys' relationship can cement. Your guys' relationship can get stronger, right? Cohesion, togetherness, right? Your team is there to help further your vision. Your team is not there for you to lash out. There's no reason why any boss needs to lash out. Even if your team member costs you hundreds of thousands of dollars, the damage is done. There's no reason for you to lash out. Find another venue, lash out to something else. As an employee, I suffered substantially, and I went through some of the most emotionally damaging times working at my prior firm. Now, like I said, I've also learned some of the most amazing, valuable concepts that I wouldn't have learned anywhere else, because I interact with other tax people and other financial advisors and other people that deal with money. And I'm grateful for the knowledge that I have for that. There's a big lesson to be learned in all of that. To go back to the story, that night, after my wife and I got back from the hospital, I looked at my wife and I said, there's no way that I could possibly go back to that firm. My boss doesn't have any respect for me. All he's going to do is continue to treat me terribly. And not only is he going to treat me terribly, but he's going to treat me worse than he has in the past. Because if I show up tomorrow, he's going to think it's okay to speak to Jeremy this way. So bosses, if you're listening, this is a feeling of how your team is going to feel if you do this. You don't want them to do this. I woke up that next day and I did not go into work. I took a day and I told the admin in our office at the time, said, hey, I'm not coming in today. That's when it really dawned on me. And that's when all of my anger and frustration it was already exhausted. My stress was exhausted. And at that point, I was fed up. I had enough. And I remember talking to my wife and saying, you know what? I'm done. I can't. I'm not going to go in there anymore. And I sent an email. I sent one email, or two letters, or not two letters, two words rather. It says, I resign. And I forwarded that to the boss, sent that to the boss. That weekend, I went into the office and I cleared my desk. And I never set foot in that place ever again. And what's amazing is that was one of the scariest moments of my life. I had no idea what I was going to do. I just quit after working there for 14 years, 15 years. I just quit what I would consider very, very strong income levels. You know, I was making multiple five figures a month, very stable, or what I thought was stable anyway. And I was scared. I was like, I don't know what we're going to do. I don't know how we're going to do it. We're going to figure it out. And for the next 30 days, I sat down and I executed a business plan. So here's what the business plan was. When I resigned, my wife and I talked about it, and she says, okay, well, what are we going to do? What do we need to focus on? How are we going to move forward? And at that point, I said, you know what? After all the things that I've been through, here's what I know. We need money. Obviously, we need to replace our current income. And so her and I decided that we needed to make at least $250,000 a year. So we needed to replace our current income at the time, and I needed at least 10 clients. So minimum 250,000, minimum 10 clients. So if I had one client pay me 250,000, no good. I needed 10. If I had 10 clients pay me 10,000 a piece, 100 grand a year, no good. I needed 250. So I needed 250,000 and I needed 10 clients. After, I would say, a day, right? So that Friday, that weekend, I took the weekend, I took all that stuff. I just kind of de-stressed and decompressed from the event of me resigning and me quitting. That Monday, I went and created a Jeremy Clarity Tax Advisors email. And I proceeded to notify the clients that I was working on that I had resigned and that they need to, it was a pleasure working with them and that I was done. There was a couple of lingering issues, and we were in the middle of a project on one particular client. And so I didn't feel good about leaving them high and dry. So I said, hey, if you guys need me, I will be available to resolve this only this issue. But I'm no longer available to resolve any other further issues. My focus, again, 250,000 in revenue, cash in the bank, and 10 clients. The only way that I knew how to do that is to call and talk to everybody that I knew. People might say, well, Jeremy, you called and talked to all your former clients at the previous firm. The truth is, there was only a handful of people that I had talked to because I only had relationships with half of the clients, or I had relationships with all the clients, but there was only a handful of clients that I really felt the need to reach out and say, hey, I'm no longer working with this firm, and it's been a pleasure to work with you. Good luck to your future success. I know you're in good hands. After all, half the team that was working on these clients, I had personally hired and trained. So I definitely felt confident in a lot of those team members. So I proceeded to call people that were not a good fit for the other firm that I had maintained relationships with. I proceeded to call people that I had interactions with on a personal level. I proceeded to have a conversation with anyone who was a good business fit. All of the professionals that I had developed relationships with over those period of years, all of the professionals that I would develop new relationships with within the last 2, 3, 4 months. I spoke to everyone. I told them the story about how I started Clarity Tax Advisors, and then I work with business owners to save them money in taxes and to help them with legal structuring and everything else. And I focused and I hustled. I hustled. When I tell you I hustled, I hustled. I had meeting after meeting every week. every day. And so much so that within 34 days, I had $250,000 in the bank. And I was working on my 17th client at the time. I had just signed a contract with my 17th client within 34 days. So by January 7th, 2020. By the way, interesting fact about all that. COVID was declared a national emergency 2 months later. So to go through the transition of working from a prior firm, having all your relationships, having all this stuff, to opening a new firm, and then 2 months later, bam, COVID hits. It's declared a national emergency. Face-to-face interactions and meetings no longer made anything. Face-to-face meetings almost impossible. Because even if I wanted to go meet with somebody, chances are their office was closed down or shut down, or the restaurants were closed, or whatever it was. So there was no meeting anyone. That's when Zoom took off, and I had also, throughout that whole process, as I was growing my company, I made a determination that my company would be virtual, primarily virtual, because I think that the talent pool across the United States is very, very strong. But also, I don't believe necessarily in having a physical location. Call me new school, whatever it might be. I'm not opposed to having an office, but there's definitely benefits to having Zoom or virtual meetings rather than in-person meetings. Going back to the story, I focused hot and heavy on getting as many clients as I possibly could. Again, through that whole process, going through all of that process of the holidays, super scared out of my mind. What are we going to do? I need a website, all this stuff. I need to meet with these people. And I was so distracted so many times about, I need a website, or I need to start working on workflows, or I need to start, doing something else. But I kept coming back to the two things that mattered the most: $250,000 in the bank, 10 clients at least. And when you start to develop that momentum ultimately carried me to well above 20 plus clients. And about the 17th to 20th client, I don't remember exactly because there was many conversations that I was having with a lot of people, is when I said, okay, I need to get to work. I need to stop selling, and I need to actually now get to work. I realized that I had too much work, and about 5 months later, after trying to manage it all myself, is when I hired my first employee. It was a really, truly amazing and trying experience. And if you're listening to this story, and if you're working for a boss that you consider terrible, or if you're in a work environment that it's just not healthy, let me tell you this straight. And please, if you take anything from this, this is the only quarter in the couch that matters. Do not work there. Your life is so much more rich than you struggling in this job where you're limited. The boss doesn't respect you. Some of your colleagues don't respect you. Life is frustrating. You're missing out on a personal life. There's so much more fulfilling activity in the world than for you to stay in that role. Now, I get it. You're scared. I was scared too. I've been scared. I'm still scared. The things that I'm scared of today are different than the things that I was scared about when I was working there. But I can tell you this, no matter what, looking back, no matter what, staying there was not worth it. Looking back, if someone offered me $1 million a year to stay at that role, I would have taken it before I resigned. But after the fact that I resigned, and knowing what I know now, there's no chance. There's no chance. Someone needs to hear this. If you're stuck at your job, you can get out. You can change it. If you don't like your boss, quit. There's a song that I just recently heard of. It talks about that. Change your circumstances. Change your situation. Now, you might say, well, Jeremy, I would love to change, but fill in the blank. All right. But fill in every excuse. I've already been there, already done that. You could start your own business doing what you do now, except now you're doing it for yourself. You can go to work for somebody else making at or as much, if not more, than what you're making now, especially in this day and age in the economy. Because if you were hired any time in the previous 3, 4, 5 years, even 2 years, our cost of living has increased so substantially that the cost of acquiring another job or getting another job, you'd be surprised. Many employers are offering dollars higher per hour for the same role that they were offering 4 years ago. Have a plan. You need to have a plan. You can't just cut it off and say, nope, I'm leaving because Jeremy told me that I'm leaving and I'm going to go and figure it out. Do not do that. Have a plan. I always had a backup plan because there was 100 times that I wanted to quit before that day. So I had charted out the plan, or I had dreamed about the plan, or I'd talked to my wife about it or whatever. So I had something in place because of the previous times where I was like, I'm done with this. I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. And so I had somewhat of a trajectory, but one of the biggest, most important things that I learned throughout that entire time was you don't have a business until you have sales. You need revenue. You need income. I don't care how good your business is. I don't care how good your patent is or your software is or this or that. I don't care if you have LOIs signed. Doesn't matter. If you have checks and contracts in the bank, done, ready to go, you have a business. You do not have a business until then. You think you might have a website. You think you might have a database. You think you might have a software, this, that. You don't have anything until you have $1 in the account for somebody buying your product or service. Okay? So everything up until that point is a useless activity. You're wasting your time. Don't do it. You're absolutely wasting your time. Everything you can do, get checks in the door, money in the bank. If you're selling a product or if you're selling a hat, if you're this, you're that, great. Go sell hats. Sell hats. Sell hats. Generate revenue. You will not have a business until revenue is generated. You will not have a business until sales are made. I talk to so many people that want to start a business and they have this great idea. And I'm like, that's a phenomenal idea. Who are you going to sell this to? How much are they going to pay? If somebody was going to pull out their wallet or write you a check, could you accept payment? In a virtual world, people don't write checks anymore. In a virtual world, they put down their credit card. If you do have a product to sell, are you available to take credit cards? Are you available to pull money out of people's bank accounts via ACH debit agreements? No. Go get that first before you get a website. Sometimes people put the cart before the horse and they think, oh, the website is there, this or that. And I guarantee there's going to be some people listening to this saying, well, I sell hats, or I sell widgets, or I sell this, or I sell that. I have a Shopify store. And so the only way somebody can buy from me, or the only way for me to make revenue, is for me to have a website. Okay, fine. I've never done that before, but I can tell you I've seen many businesses launch without websites, including retail product-based websites. Like if you're selling something, or if you want to sell something, you don't need a website. There's plenty of people that are selling things. Go to any swap meet, go to any farmer's market, go to anything like that to prove your concept, prove the market wants what you're selling. Okay, that's the whole point. Okay, it'll also refine your sales message. There's a whole lot of things there. Go sell first. Go sell first. And if you can't sell, partner with somebody who can sell. And before you create anything in the business, go sell things first. Because if you can't sell anything, all the things that you create in the business are useless and worthless, and you've wasted your time. It's the worst thing to do when you're trying to make ends meet and pay the rent or pay the mortgage. Don't do that. Go sell. So after 5-6 months, I realized that I needed to hire my employee. I needed to hire somebody, because at that point, I realized I was so focused on selling, as you should be. Always be selling. ABS. They say the ABCs. No. It's ABS. Always be selling. Always be closing. The reason why I say that, because some of my clients are listening, in order for you to have your rent paid in 6 months, in order for you to have your bills paid, in order for you to have food on the table, you have to learn to not only manage your personal finances, but you have to learn to generate new business. You always have to learn to generate new business. Period. End of story. And one thing all of my clients will agree on is their number one goal is to generate revenue inside their business. One of the highest, if not the top common factor among all of the success of all my clients is they all focus on top line revenue. They all focus on the success of the business, top line revenue. It's the biggest deal. In order to have a business, every section of business can fail. You can have the finance section fail. You can have the operations section fail. Your business will still continue if your sales are on point. If your operations are perfect, if your finances are perfect and your sales suck, guess what? You're out of business. Sales are 1000% the most critical piece of operations. Now, a lot of you are going to try to tell me, oh, if you can have sales, but your finances are weak, blah, 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 blah. You can file bankruptcy or, you can still go into bankruptcy and still have strong sales, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's true. But that's on account of there's a reason why the finances are failing and the sales are still a success. Embezzlement and debt are really the two biggest things. People stealing money from the company, your leverage from the company. So, whole lot of stuff we covered today. I'm going to save the rest for the next episode. I really think that the next episode is going to be very exciting. We'll talk about some of the keys to success in business, some of the common success traits that I see among all the clients and people that I've worked with in the past. But as I reflect on closing this podcast and this episode, there's a couple of things that I'm grateful for and that I would really want you to think about as taking the next steps. Number one, if you're an employee and you don't like what you do, change it. There's plenty of resources out there. You can figure that out. And if you're watching this video and you're an employee and you can't figure out how to change your situation, reach out to me and we'll work it out. I'm confident that I can help you figure that out. Drop a comment section or shoot me an email. My contact information is all over the internet. Now, if you're a business owner, you need to think about your key employees and how to keep them. Understand that out of the top 5 things that employees love about working, money is number 4. It's not number 1. It's number 4. Personal growth is number 1. Achieving goals is number 2, right? Understand that your team wants to help you, but if you're a jerk about things, they're going to walk. They're going to walk really fast, and your business is going to be put in shambles for a small period of time. Understand what drives your team. And I think it's perfectly fine for you to actually take a step back and get into a personal conversation with your team member and say, hey, where are the things that I need to work on? Where are my opportunities for growth personally? So between me and you, I'm your boss. How can I be a better boss to you? What are the things that I'm doing that really frustrate you? What are the things that I'm doing that really get you excited? Is there anything that I do that you're like, oh, I want to take charge of that, or I wish I was doing that, or as a boss, do I give you the opportunity to make improvements to the company? Do I give you the opportunity to suggest new things? When you do suggest new things, do I shut them down? Or do I really pay attention and listen? Do I take a step back and take an objective perspective of your recommendations and thoughts? There was a company in another part of the world, I forget what it was, it might have been Japan or China, but they told all of the members of their 4,000 person company to make a suggestion on how to better the company. And one of the suggestions was as simple as sending a confirmation text to their customers. And once they did that, they recognized an increase in revenue of 37% within 2 months. So your employees know what's going on too. I've learned a lot about being a leader. I've learned a lot about being a team member. And I didn't always feel this way about teams and about employees. So if you're a boss and you're sitting there thinking about how employees are frustrating and there's no way that I'm going to sit there and have these conversations with these people, and they're only there for the paycheck. Yeah, that might be true about some people. Some people need a paycheck, and and you're there, and that's where they're going, and that's fine. But if you're that boss and you're sitting back saying, I'm not sure I can have these conversations with these team members because XYZ, fill in the blank, you should take a cold, hard look in the mirror and find out why you're unwilling to have that conversation with them. Because that's a red flag. That's a sign that tells me something, that you need to take a step back and you need to look in the mirror and you need to reflect on why you're not willing to have that conversation. All the good bosses have those conversations. All the good bosses have those conversations. Ask your team now. Promise you. If you are actually going and interviewing with somebody, think about asking them those questions. What made your bosses in the past so successful? And on the times that everybody remembers the boss who was a jerk. Everybody remembers the boss who was ultra nice. Everybody remembers the boss who was a jerk, and not for the good reasons. So I would encourage you to just take a step back and approach and analyze your team in a very objective and listening way. I thought today's podcast was going to be about starting your own business and the keys to success, but we took a pretty constructive turn. I want you to take 30 to 60 seconds, and I want you to think about one thing or two that you took away from this podcast. Write down the action associated with what that takeaway was. Wow, I really need to have better conversations with my team. Okay, if that's the case, take a moment and write down the first team member you're going to have this conversation with. Okay? Now, if you're an employee and you're listening to this and you're saying, man, I'm so frustrated about my job and I'm so frustrated about my situation and I need to make more money. I need this, I need that. And you really honestly feel like if you were to bring those issues to your boss, he's not going to listen. Great. Assume that you lost your job tomorrow. What would you do? Would you want to go into business for yourself? Would you look for another job? What would you do? And that's your next takeaway. Take 60 seconds and reflect on that moment. It's been fun visiting with you today. I learned a lot. I feel really good about releasing and having that conversation. I hope you feel the same. And I hope today's quarter in the couch was extreme value to you. If you did find it valuable, I ask two things. Number one, subscribe to the channel because there's going to be these types of videos that come out every Tuesday. And number two, share it with a friend who you think needs to hear this. If you have any feedback or comments, feel free to leave it in the comment section, as I do read those, and I'm looking for improvement in my own ways. Until next time, keep scouring the couch for the next quarter. Have a great day.